So in this video, we're going to continue talking about topic 4.4, I believe is what we are on, right? We're talking about complex numbers. So we're going to go through explain one. So we finally define what a complex number is here. It's any number that can be written of the form a plus bi, where a and b are both real numbers, okay? And I is assumed to be equal to the square root of -1. For a complex number, a plus bi, a is the real part of the number and b is called the imaginary part of the number. Note that imaginary part refers to the real multiplier of I. It does not refer to the imaginary number bi. So the imaginary part means just the number, not the I. The Venn diagram shows some examples of complex numbers. So complex numbers are basically when we mix the real part with the imaginary part. Real numbers are kind of their own unit or in their own category. Imaginary numbers, they're both subsets of complex numbers, but we can't make them in one of those two categories if we put them together. So notice the real set of numbers, the subset of complex numbers. That's because a real number can be written of the form a plus 0 equals I. So what they're saying is if I took 17, I could always write it as 0 plus I. So I can write it to make it look like a complex number. I could take one of the imaginary numbers and write it as 0 minus 7i. So it looks like a complex number. So it's a subset. I think that's how I got all of that. All right, let's look at example 1. All I have to do is identify the real and the imaginary parts of the given number, then tell which of the following sets the number belongs to: real numbers, imaginary numbers, or complex numbers. Okay, so I'm going to identify the real number, so the real, the imaginary part, and then which set it belongs to. So I'd say the 9 goes to the real numbers, the 5 in front of the I goes to the imaginary part, and then since I have both a real number plus an imaginary number, this would have to be classified as a complex number. All right, looking at number 4 here. So we have the real, it's technically 0i, right? So the real part would be 11. The imaginary part, which I'm going to guess they don't ask you about, but would be 0, right? And then because it only had a real number piece, it doesn't really have an imaginary number piece, I would classify that as a real number. So this would go to the real number set.